Hello guys and welcome back to our database course. So in this video, we'll be doing nested queries. And nested queries basically means that we have a query within a query, right? And that is our nested queries. So let's start. So to begin with, let's take an example and see why this is even allowed, right? Why you can nest queries within queries within queries, right? So let's see this. So I have a one SQL statement here, right? I have one SQL statement here, and I know that the output for this statement, right? The output of this statement is going to be what? Is going to be a table, right? The output for this statement is a table, right? And I know that I am using a table here, right? In this query. So I am using a table to get another table. So why can I not use another query that generates this table so that I can form this table, right? Why can I not do that? There is no reason why that should not be allowed. And that means I should be able to write something like select star from select whatever attributes I want from some table, right? I can do this, and this should be perfectly fine. This should be perfectly fine, right? And it works, but it is slightly redundant, right? Why would you do this? Why would you do this? There's no reason. But this was only to show you that it could be done, it is possible, and it is a very valid thing to do, right? So let's begin with what we can and should do, right? So let's bring a table now. Right, and we have a query, right? Let's just take the most basic one. So select star from table. Okay. Let's assume I have two tables, right? So I have two tables, right? Let's name them T1, T2. Let's change our query accordingly. So select star from T1, right? What if I want one column here from T2? You can do this using nested queries, right? So I can write something like select whatever attributes I want from T1. So I'm just writing T1 attributes, right? Comma, and I can give a full query here, right? So I can say select desired column from T2, right? And let's complete this query and say from T1, right? So I am saying select T1 attribute and this thing from T1. So it goes in, looks at T1 and says, okay, I find T1 attributes here, and it makes a table, right? It makes a table with that. And then it sees, okay, I want this as well, right? So it sees the query and executes it, right? Select desired column from T2. So it goes in T2, gets this desired column, adds it here, and we get an output, right? This is similar to how we can write select T1 attributes, comma 7 from T1, right? And what this will do is give me T1 attributes and a column that has 7, right? Every value is 7, right? So this is similar to that, right? This is similar to that. Instead of 7, we are giving it a list of values to put it in the fields, right? So that was just one way, right? There's another way, and that is the way that we use nested queries mostly, right? And that is with the in clause, right? With the in clause. So let's take an example, right? Let's take an example. So I am saying select star from T1 where some attribute from T1, some attribute from T1, right? Some attribute from T1 is in the table generated by the query that I'm giving it, right? So let me give it a query. There is a small problem in this, and that is that I cannot use star here. Can you think of a reason why? Why should this star be not allowed? Why should the star be not allowed? The reason for that is very simple, right? I have one attribute here, and I'm saying there can be any number of attributes here, right? That is not allowed, right? If you have one attribute, you can only match it with one. You can only match it with one. You cannot match it with 10, right? There's also the fact that this and this should be of the same type, right? Obviously these things should be maintained, right? So they should be of the same type, they should be of the same width, right? So if this is text type, right, if this is text, then the column here should also be text, right? Only then can we check whether this is contained in this, right? Only then. So let's change it a bit. Let's change it a bit, and instead of saying select star from T2, let's say let's say select T2 dot desired attribute, right? T2's desired attribute from, of course, T2, right? Of course. So in this case, I am saying get everything from T1, but only in the situation when this certain attribute is also in T2, right? So what would happen is I have T1, I have T2. Let's say this was our sum column, right? The column that we want here. And let's say T2 has our desired column here, right? So I will go for every row. I'm going to check, is this certain value anywhere in this column, right? Anywhere. It does not need to match, it only needs to exist, right? If it is, then I'm going to display this whole thing, and I will do this for every single record, right? Every single record. So this is the main way how we use our nested queries, right? I will also add one small thing here, and that is that most nested queries can be written with the help of joins, right? So let's write it in caps. Most nested queries can be written with the help of joins, right? So most nested queries can be written with the help of joins. So if I were to write this one with the help of joins, I would be joining T1 and T2, and I would be checking if T1 is T1 exists for T2, right? If T1 the value from T1 exists in my T2 column, right? I would be checking that. Of course it would have to be cross join. Now that I've said it, let's actually go ahead and do it, right? So let's take the same example we took. So let's use this very query and convert it from using nested queries to using joins. So let's do that. All right. So we have our table T1 and my other table is what? T2. So I know that I will have to make a join. I will have to make a join on T1 and T2, right? So I can say select star from T1 comma T2, right? By now you already know all other joins are made using cross joins, right? So we will also begin with cross join, and if it turns out to be some other join, maybe we will shift to that, right? So I am saying select star from T1 and T2, that is get their cross product, and on the condition, right, I am saying get this when so select star from T1 T2 where T1 let's just call this T1 dot a, right? Let's just call this T1 dot a, and let's call this T2 dot t, right? And let's say select star from T1 T2 where T1 dot a is equal to T2 dot t, right? And the only difference between these two queries right now is that this one will give me information from T1 only, and this one will give me information from both T1 and T2. I can simply change that by removing the asterisk from here and replacing it with what? T1 attributes, right? So I can just write down all the T1 attributes and it is done. So let's see, are these two actually the same, right? Let's see if these two are actually the same. So I have two tables, right? I have two tables, T1 and I have another one, T2, right? T1 has column A, right? T1 dot A, and T2 has column D, T2 dot T. So let's take some values, right? So 1, 2, and 3, and maybe this one has 2, 3, and 7, right? So I say select everything from T1 where T1's attribute is present in T2's column, right? So I check for first record and I see, okay, T1's attribute is 1. Is it present in T2's column, right? Is it present in this column? Is 1 present in my D column? And the answer is no. That means I will be rejecting this value. What about the next record, right? So T1's attribute is what? 2. Let's see if 2 exists in this column. It does. That means that this record has been accepted and it would be present. What about 3? Again, 3 is also present in this, right? It is present here, and that is why this record is also accepted and it would be shown, right? Now let's check, do we get the same results? Do we get the same results when we use our joint statement, right? So let's see. Let's see what a join would give us, right? So we were saying select whatever from T1 T2, that is our cross product. Let's see what that would give us. So we have 1 and that would be present with all of these. So I would have 1 2, I would have 1 3, and I would have 1 7. Similarly, I would have 2 2, I would have 2 3, I would have 2 7. Similarly, I would have 3 2, 3 3, and 3 7, right? And I am saying only those values when T1's attribute and T2's attribute are equal, right? So when this and this is equal, right? When this and this is equal, only those values are to be considered. So let's see, 1 and 2, are they equal? Rejected. 1 and 3, are they equal? Rejected. 1 and 7, are they equal? Rejected. 2 and 2, are they equal? Yes, they are accepted. 2 and 3, are they equal? Rejected. 2 and 7, are they equal? Rejected. 3 and 2, are they equal? Rejected. 3 and 3, are they equal? Yes, accepted. 3 and 7, are they equal? No, rejected. So even from here, I only get what? 2 and 3, right? And I already said that we are not using star here. We would be using T1 attributes, right? So I would only get information from T1 in the case when this is true. In the case when this is true, right? So again, I would only be getting these values, right? My output would be the same, and that means that these two queries do the same job. they do the same job. I hope that was clear. This was just an example. There can be situations where a nested query cannot be converted from a nested form to a joined form, right? There can be those kind of situations, but most of them can be, right? Most of them can be, and most of the times the one that is made using joins is much more optimized. All right. So before we move on to correlated nested queries, let's talk some more about our in, right? So we did what? We had an attribute and we said, is this present in the output from this query, right? It is not necessary to have only one attribute here, right? I could have two, I could have three, right? I could have n number of attributes here. The only check is that the query here should result in a table that has exactly the same number of attributes as present on the left hand side, right? As present on the left hand side. So if this results in a table with one attribute, this will work. But if it results in two, it won't work. If it results in zero, it won't work. In this situation, if this results in 1, it doesn't work. 0, it doesn't work. 2, it works. 3, it doesn't work. 4, it doesn't work. Anything else, it doesn't work. It only works for 2. Why? Because this is 2. So this must also result in a table that has 2, right? Similarly, for n attributes present, we must have a query here that would return a table with n attributes, right? Obviously, because we would be using this single thing to match the whole row, right? This is very understandable, right? You have let's take the example for a pair, right? So AB, right? And I get this table, right? I get this table and I'm going to check if AB exists like this, right? If it exists, I'm going to say yes. In all of the situations, it is a no, right? If it is AC and BB, this is not true, right? If it was BA, this is not true, right? And only this is the acceptable form. All right, let's move on to our correlated nested queries, right? So what are correlated nested queries? What do you mean by correlation? Let's see. So let's take an example, right? Select star from T1 where T1 dot x in select star from T2 where T1 dot y is equal to T2 dot z. This is an example of a correlated nested query, right? So what is the correlation? This right here, that is the correlation, right? So from my parent table, right? From the parent table, I am taking some reference on my condition in the subquery, right? This is called a subquery, right? In my subquery, I am taking a reference from my parent table, right? From one of the parent tables, right? There can be n number of nested queries. So whenever I take some reference from any of my parent tables, I would say that this is what? This is a correlated nested queries, right? Correlated nested query. That was it, guys.